Hey, music teachers. I am so excited to be chatting with the ever lovely Shirley Wang today, who has taken it from being a student to being a teacher to performing on the concert stage. So I can't wait to share your story, Shirley. I'm Gloria St. Germain from Ultimate Music Theory, and I really am talking about what does it take to make that transition. So Shirley, take us back to when you were a student. How did that feel for you?
Well, I started studying the piano when I was 4.5, so I felt like I'd been a lifelong student of music. And of course, I started teaching when I was a teenager, like a lot of people.
Yes.
In the meantime, I also developed my operatic voice and started performing on concert stages in a lot of places a little bit later in my late teens, early 20s. So I think it was a very organic process. One led to another, and I think each part of that helped the other parts to be better.
Yes. And it's so interesting when we look at our journey. And
Mhm.
Shirley Wang is also inside the Ultimate Music Theory Elite Educator Program. She's also an international best-selling author in the Power of Why Musicians series, where she shares her story. So if you haven't grabbed it yet, you might want to go grab it. The Power of Why Musicians series, and you'll see Shirley's story in there. It's I remember reading that and just going like, oh my gosh, like what a powerful story. Do you want to share just a little bit about your story?
I think there were a lot of meandering around some transitions because I immigrated to this country when I was a teenager,
Yes.
and of course, I found that the whole discovery of what to do and the whole world of performing it was very foreign to me, and no puns intended. It was truly just very strange, and but I think I really started doing a lot more teaching after I started performing, and because to support a performing career, you really have to figure out something that can keep your mind in music. So and I found out I love it. I loved teaching and I love performing. And I think the two really facilitated each other.
I think so too. And you really bring so much more into that element of teaching when you've experienced it from the performing end as
Mm.
well. And one of the things that I'm passionate about, of course, is sharing music education and helping other teachers. And we're coming up to our 3-day live event, which
Mhm.
is Music Business Mastery. I'll pop it up on the screen. So if you're watching, you can learn more about it. And and Shirley, you've been attending Music Business Mastery Live, and we talk about mindset strategies and tools
Mhm.
so that you can feel confident in your teaching and connect with students at a deeper level and also become profitable as a music teacher. What was maybe one of your takeaways from Music Business Mastery Live?
I think mindset is number one. I think one of the very common topics you see a lot online in the music teachers groups is how do you charge for a fee that's worth your worth, right? But I
Mhm.
think if your mindset is you understand your worthwhile and our worth is not coming from just only external performances, but our mindset, then everything comes and follows after. And I think it's that what I love about your process is you help people to understand that, and there is an order. It's not you go out there and you shake your fist, say, "Hey, I'm worth this much as you understanding internally from the mindset who you are,
Yeah.
and then everything else follows."
Yeah, 100% Shirley. And I think what's so interesting too is that when we discover how we can really develop our own mindset and how it really has
Mhm.
a shift of believing, and we all know the common saying, if you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right.
Right.
But the other beauty of it, and I share all of this inside Music Business Mastery, and in fact, day one is all about mindset. But the beauty
Right.
of learning and understanding this is as a teacher, you have the power to help your students shift their mindset as well.
Mhm.
We've all had students who have said, oh, I can't memorize that. Oh, no, I can't play that. It's too hard. And they can, of course, but we have to understand, how can we lead? And you're a performer, you've stood on the grand stage. And obviously my passion is music theory education and helping teachers,
Mhm.
build their studios by encouraging that as well. What does that mean for you when you are about to look at a musical score as a teacher, but then also as a performer, how important is it for you to know the language of music theory?
100%. And now, in order to understand and really, really get behind what you're performing, you have to do theoretical music analysis,
Yeah.
and as part of your preparation, and you have to be able to hear the theory, not just see what's on the page, but hear the theory because that is the composer's intention. And one of the things that I've been forever grateful for is my college theory professor, who's now the in charge of the entire Berkeley School of Music in Boston, and she's a composer. So when she taught theory to us, it was to prepare young students to walk on the world stage as great performers. And so everything has to come alive. If you don't understand music theory, it's like you and the composers are not speaking the same language.
Yeah.
If you're not speaking the same language, then the communication is going to be shallow and the performances will be shallow.
Yeah, 100%. And when we're thinking about teaching music theory and
Mhm,
teaching in groups, because it's number one, we learn
mhm,
faster when we teach in groups
mhm,
and learn in groups. It
mhm,
supports us, and I'll be sharing that as well in the 3-day Music Business Mastery Live event, where we actually talk about
mhm,
the 5 fundamentals of how you learn faster when you're learning in groups. And it also is more profitable for you as a business owner.
mhm,
But when you're teaching groups, sometimes funny things can happen, and even when you're teaching one-on-one. So if you have a memory, Shirley, of what is maybe a funny moment, if you can recall, that ever happened to you as a music teacher, because I know as music teachers, we all share funny moments, and
mhm.
sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. My student walked in, and I remember when, as I was teaching a class one day, and I was struggling to find something or other in my music studio. And my student kind of rolled his eyes and he said, Miss Glory, it's always filed under, the closet over here, and it's on the bottom shelf. And he said, I don't know what you'd do without me. And I was, I laughed and I thought, well, there he is speaking truth about a memory that I do always keep it on that shelf in the closet. And I don't know why I wasn't looking there in the first place. But sometimes our students they just bring a little bit of humor and sometimes make
Mhm.
you feel a little embarrassed. So, what's one of your stories that you can share about funny things that happen in your music studio?
I think this is something that happened uniquely because we started teaching online, so the students are in their homes. So I have this little Chinese student, and she lives with her parents, her little sister, her big brother, and their grandparents. And we always have lessons during dinner time, or close to dinner time. So one day she stopped. She says, Miss Shirley, can you hear my grandmother beating eggs in the background? And I said, actually, I can. I'm so glad you mentioned it because I couldn't help but kept noticing somebody's beating eggs in the background. And that was really neat because it it's like in performance we talk about there's a fourth wall, right? And
Mhm.
so I feel in Zoom teaching there is a kind of a fourth wall. And or even in some ways when you're teaching in your studio because it's in a for us it's a realistic setting, but for the students it's kind of they're walking into an environment. So that felt like we broke through a fourth wall and we welcomed each other into our lives, and that allowed me to actually push the students a little harder because they trust me.
Yes. And it's good to have those fun moments and to
Hmm.
make it real, because as teachers we're also their confidant.
Right.
We're to some degree their friend, obviously their educator. But I think too, when we challenge them, I remember when my husband, who is a professional singer, entertainer, and he was working as a vocal coach, and he created a stage in his teaching studio that was not really tall, just a little bit.
Right.
And he was, testing the microphones and things. And he said to me, honey, do you mind just getting up on the stage and just say, check 1, 2, just check the microphones. I've got, a class coming in. I'm going to be doing some vocal coaching. So I said,
Mhm.
sure, being the wonderful wife that I am, ha ha ha. And I got up on the stage, and all of a sudden I was terrified. I said, oh
Mm.
my gosh, this is so scary. And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, just standing, even though it was just a small step, but just standing there
Mhm.
and with the microphone staring me in the face, I realized this is a completely different experience. And I think that's why it's so wonderful that when we enable our students to do recitals, to perform at festivals, sometimes in competitions, but just that whole experience of giving them those tools. And the more you do it when you're younger, you talked about performing from a very young age. So what maybe is your mindset or your strategy when you go from rehearsing, maybe even in front of a mirror in your own studio, to taking that energy? Like, what's the process of getting you on stage in state, in like, I'm a performer?
I think there are a lot of things we cannot control. And when we shoot to control everything, then we are going to be very nervous because we become aware of the fact that we can't. So one of the things that I find helpful for performing as well as for auditions is to set three very specific goals. Specific goals that's attainable, that is tangible. And if you can hit all three, then you've done great. No matter what happens with everything else and what other people have to say, or things that you cannot control, then you've done great. If you've done two, you did a good job. If you did one, you've tried really hard, you can pat yourself on the back. And chances are most of us can hit at least two, if not all three. And it brings something that's very intangible and difficult to measure, and feels kind of almost like something you're always reaching for and chasing after, to be something that is measurable and feel like you're growing always, going back to the mindset.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that, Shirley, because it gives me an insight too, that sometimes we just think, oh, you succeeded or you failed. But I love what you just said about setting three little mini goals, if you will, in there, and just say, well, did I do that? Actually, I did. I had it memorized. And, or what's the next thing? Was my posture there? Did I sing or perform with confidence? And thirdly, did I, did I play everything correctly as I had practiced it? Because we all know the way you play it when you're by yourself and the final performance never quite seems to be there. And it makes you nervous. Some of us thrive when it's live, and there's so many obstacles to go in between. But I think one of the things too that I share inside Music Business Mastery, which is what I'm so passionate about, is that many teachers, such as yourself, have come into the Music Business Mastery more than once, just as you've received a lesson more than once, and you've taught the same lesson more than once, because we always learn something different. And when you think about your lessons and your teaching, as well as your performing, what is maybe one of the things that you've heard repeatedly, and yet it still means something when you hear it again?
I think when somebody connects, whether it's connecting with the music, connecting with the audience, connecting with themselves, and because I think connection can go in many different directions, it's not single direction. And when somebody has had a connection in that moment, whether it's myself, it feels like a revelation every time it happens, or if a student does it or a performer on stage does, it's always very special.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I think we just need to connect. And it's one of the things that I love about our Ultimate Music Teachers community is that we always love seeing you, Shirley, in our coaching calls. And I know you, speaking of connection, you have connected with many of the other teachers and shared ideas within the community. And that's really what I think we're most passionate about, is just helping teachers connect at a deeper level and become lifelong learners, right?
Yes, yes. And I'm learning an original song by one of our fellow friends who is from The Power of Why. I'm working on an original piece by Rami Barnif, and potentially we will be performing this in Los Angeles in October, and I'm really thrilled.
Ooh, don't forget to send me an invite. I want to come.
Yes.
And, isn't that interesting? I'm so grateful that you mentioned that, Shirley, because when we even think about collaboration, and when we look at, the Power of Why musicians, we have 125 authors across the 5-book series, and all contributing their stories, and yet networking with each other, just as teachers do. The world of music educators and musicians is not about a competition. It's about collaboration.
Right.
It's about, helping take your music to the next level. I'm so excited for you. That is such wonderful news. Thank you for sharing that, Shirley.
And we're so grateful for you for making that connection. And going back, one of the things I know you mentioned a lot doing your workshops with teachers is gratitude.
Yeah.
It is the magic, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I really feel that too. And I'm really grateful to you, Shirley. We had the
Mm,
opportunity to connect many years ago and then got to go hang out in Santa Cruz, California.
that's
That was kind
right.
of
That
fun
was
for
so
a
special.
day of brainstorming and sitting there and just by the ocean and just, thinking
Mm.
about things and how we can collaborate and do other adventurous activities. So thank you so much, Shirley, for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you inside MusicBusinessMastery.live, and I can't wait to learn more from you, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Wishing you all the best. You got a lot of projects coming up, Shirley. Bye now. See you there.
Bye now.